It's not, okay, there we go.
We're live.
Are we live?
Yep.
Hi.
Let me just triple check. Yes.
Everybody. I love this part of it where everyone's like, am I there? What's happening? Like, this is where we should drop gold. This is where we should be giving away our best business secrets ever. Is that what we're here to do, Chenae, Carey? Are we giving away our like how, what, where, why, when?
I don't have any secrets.
I think you and I both share a lot all of the time. But the reason this kind of excited me was, well, completely excited me, is because we are celebrating, both of us, in the same month, our 5th birthday. Yours was officially yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't pay that much attention, so I'm just going for the month of July. Sometime in July, I started my business and I'm taking the whole month to celebrate it. But congratulations, first of all. That is really exciting. And what I love is that I've known you at least for that long, because I remember when it must have been in the Heart-Centered group where you were sharing about this really big upcoming transition of going away from paid work.
Yeah.
And you've been part of my life, you know, in increasing ways since then. And I really love that I have that as a really clear memory of getting to know you. It was you making that leap into the void. Little did you know that that leap was going to eventually bring you front and center of the Institute, and now you are a leader of the Institute as well. So I think there's a beautiful kind of synchronicity about the fact that even then, if you were to look back on the journey you've taken, even though you didn't know it, every step has prepared you for becoming the spiritual leader that you are now, right?
Yeah, totally.
You thought you were just leaving paid work to become an online entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's all I had. That was my little perspective.
Yeah. So I think it's worth us spending some time together and really, you know, giving that opportunity to I guess, you know, you and I are both successful in what we do. You have pivoted and you've definitely, you know, the focus of where you were 5 years ago compared to now has changed. But I think the ethos of the way you do business is still very much the same. And you've always been a shining light in the online space. I think there'd be hardly anyone who doesn't know who you are, who's part of the kind of communities that we share. Yeah. And I would love to sort of, if you're happy for me to ask you some questions first, and we can kind of go together on this, is like, you know, one is a solo enterprise, one is an institute. They're very different. I think there's interesting perspectives for everybody.
Yeah.
But to sort of ask, you know, what is it that you believe makes it possible for you to succeed in this online entrepreneur space? Like, what do you think what quality of character do you think you have or need to do this?
It's such a good question. Aside from quality of character, not having children makes it a heck of a lot easier. Like, I am under no misconception that the fact that I do not have tiny humans, you know, needing me very regularly makes things a lot easier for me. But in terms of the quality of character, I would have to say there's a willingness to make it work and go through the difficult times, because when that time came for my job to kind of come to an end, which is exactly what I asked for and I wanted, I could have easily just gone, oh, actually, that makes me really uncomfortable. I'm just going to go and get another job and continue with my business on the side. But I decided not to. And that there's an element of courage that took. Like, I remember, and I know you shared with me just recently, you remember this, right? It was, oh shit, this is happening. And I was so annoyed because everybody out there was excited for me and I was scared shitless. Like, I was terrified. And everybody else was like, this is amazing, congratulations. I'm like, why are you congratulating me? I couldn't see the forest for the trees at that point in time. I then got the opportunity to do the very same thing to one of my fellow sisters, Laura Dick, just recently, because she's just ticked over when July kicked in, 12 months full-time self-employed for herself. And I got to do the same. I was the annoying person going, yay, congratulations. It was nice to be able to return that favor a little bit. But there is definitely, I would say, that willingness, the grit to go for it, because it's not easy and it's not comfortable and it does take work. So yeah, I'd have to say there's some truth to that for me.
It's a tenacity, absolutely. But there's something else in there that you're hitting on, which I share very strongly, which is there has to be a desire that is so big in you to be the self-determiner of your time. And the freedom that comes with that also comes with a very big responsibility, which is no one's paying you at the end of the week if you decided to half-ass it that week. Yeah. Like if you're in a paid job and you don't have a great week, no one's really paying that much attention if you kind of don't do your best job. Yeah. But when you work for yourself, you know, yes, sure, you can schedule downtime and all the rest of it, but the buck always stops with you. But what the payoff of that is this self-determination, this sovereignty. And for me, I mean, I figured that out as part of my character really early on, that I still get shocked when I'm like, do you want to come and do this thing for me? People go, oh, I've got to work that day. I'm like, well, just don't go to work. Like, I really can't, I feel like I'm in a prison if someone else owns my time. And that tenacity to succeed comes from the desire to be free. And I feel like I got that in you, like that self-determination.
Yeah, totally. I remember when we were in Tuscany and I was hanging out with Shannon and we did some sort of archetypal work, and there was an archetype which really, really heavily leans into that freedom. And what I realized in talking with her was this liberator engineer archetype that is very quite strong in me, totally probably in you too. I find freedom in structure. Yeah. So that I have built my business, and you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of things that have kind of carried through, even though I've pivoted. There's a lot of systems, there's a lot of routine, there's a lot of discipline and structure that give me so much freedom that I carried through all the way through the transition of 2019 and moving out of the Facebook marketing side of things and into what I'm doing now. So
yeah, I love the liberator engineer archetype. She was probably the biggest. I mean, I loved all the archetypes Shannon identified as part of me, but she gave me the most insight into what I need to succeed. So because like you, I'm really good at structure and I'm really good at turning up even when it's hard and doing the thing that needs to be done. I can do hard things. Finding the space within that, the spaciousness within that, and scheduling that. So really like genuinely scheduling time where, like, whether I took an extra week in Bali after a retreat or I scheduled trips that would be, you know, the reward for all of that effort. Because the liberator engineer needs her freedom to thrive. And that, you know, I've always said, you know, the greatest benefit of being successful is that you can afford to then reward yourself for that success, you know, whether that's a nanny or a house cleaner or holidays or whatever. And like, quite honestly, I'm having a really hard day today mentally because Victoria's back in lockdown, well, Melbourne is, and I realize my freedom seeker, my liberator engineer she's grumpy as fuck because she needs to go somewhere and do something because all the hard work needs to be rewarded, right? Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting thing for all online entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, you know, those who are thinking about it, is you got to know your character. You've got to know what you need to succeed. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll break it. You'll break it on purpose because you've not understood the shadow side of yourself, and you will you know, my liberator engineer and her shadow side loves to just keep fucking with my things and keep going, I could be better. I could do it like this. I could try harder here. I could do this. And then I take it apart and I could ruin it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's getting to know yourself and the ways that you need to give yourself whatever you need. And it's not going to be like anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can recognize the shadow within mine as well, which is, it jumps into a little bit of the inspiring element of my character, where I grab a hold of a new idea and I'll unpack it all and I'll put it all, like I can systemize it and put a structure to it, and this needs to happen and this needs to happen. But then I get so excited and so like, oh my gosh, and then I just like spit it out into the world before it's ready. And then I get these messages from people going, this isn't working, this is broken, what's happening here? And I'm like, yeah. But I recognize that very early on. And actually prior, I think it was whilst I still had a day job, it was very, very early on in that 5-year journey that I noticed that within myself. And so now I've just released a course literally yesterday in line with my bizversary. It was ready last week. Pretty much. But I recognized that part of me that was like, yeah, pretty much bit was not excellence. And I was like, that's not going to cut it anymore. I'm no longer that person who just puts it out there because of the excitement. Yeah. And I have to be really mindful of that part, because I slip into the shadow with that, historically speaking, but nowadays much more ethical, I would say, and integral in my decisions and how I put things out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, I really admire that, because I think that comes with business maturity. It's like that willingness to sit with something for a while, and even to sit with it so that you can figure out, actually, is this actually serving my business, or am I going to cannibalize my own offer? Am I going to actually create more problems for myself than I would create revenue? And I think, you know, I see that a lot in my students, that desire, you know, the energy and the excitement is like getting high. So you get off on this rush of inspiration, and then you want to share it before it's matured, before you've actually looked at whether this is not even just from a systems point of view, but does this idea actually need to happen now? And I think that's what you're describing is so archetypal. I think particularly for those of us who are in a business, even if it's not in a spiritual business, it's a heart-centered business. This feels like I'm putting my soul on the line when I offer you something. We can actually fall into the trap of causing ourselves harm by not actually protecting our ideas for a little while and watching them germinate and grow before we chuck them out into the world. And that idea is, you know, one thing, sit on it for your one thing for a while, let it mature, let it show you. And nobody wants to do that. They do, you know, there's no satisfaction in sitting quietly at home with your idea.
No, there's no fun in that. There's no fun in consistency. It's boring, especially, and I've noticed the more I spend more time with heart-centered women and spiritual women, that consistency feels boring. It's not exciting. We're not able to kind of shape shift and move around and jump from one thing to another. But consistency is success. It is.
Yeah, I'm so with you, and it actually causes quite a bit of heartbreak, because, you know, part of the work I do is in that mentoring of women on this path in their businesses, and to get that message through. The two words I use all the time are consistency and strategy. Like, is this a strategic choice?
Yeah.
And if it's so, you know, so hard, if you haven't taken the time to sit with your business for long enough to get to know it and understand it, which you have to do by doing business. Like, I'm not asking you to stay home with your idea till you're perfectly formed, but to really do one thing for a while, and then you'll have good data about whether there's something else, or it should evolve, or it's you know, something to let go of and bring in some new ideas. But yeah, it's very similar to spiritual discipline in that same way, like finding the tapas, the discipline to sit in stillness for a little while. It's the same rigor that you need to come into meditation every day at 5:30 in the morning when it's dark and cold, you know. And I think it's the parallels between the kind of development of ourselves spiritually as well as the development of our businesses is just so obvious to me. I want you to share your thoughts on that, but I would love to hear, I want to have a look and see if there's any comments, but while I do that, I'd love to hear really, I guess, what was the moment where you realized that your business was viable, like you were going to stick around, that this was not a flash in the pan, that you weren't going to have to go back to paid work? Because that moment was so important for me, and I'd love to hear your experience of that.
So mine was a few years ago now. So the 5 years, just so that we're clear, the 5-year bizversary is the anniversary for me personally of when I registered my business name. And my old business name wasn't under, it was a separate name to my own name. And it was called The Booking Queen. And we won't go into the details of what that business looked like. But let's just say that one was not particularly viable. That one got nipped in the bud fairly quickly because I was trying to serve lots of people with lots of different things. And that's how I ended up in one pocket, which was the Facebook marketing. Yeah. Just because you can does not mean that you should.
Oh my God. Just every person out there who's thinking about or expanding their business, whatever, please hear what Chenae just said. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yes. Best advice ever.
I've been hearing and seeing that a lot, and it's been coming out of my mouth a lot lately, actually. It's just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So the 5 years, in sort of a couple of years at most into it, was when I was doing a personal development workshop. And I did this workshop and it was called Designing Your Ideal Life or something to that effect. And we had a decision-making matrix that the facilitator was taking us through. And very long story short, needed some volunteers. Anyone who knows me knows I'll volunteer for everything. Yeah, take it. I have to be mindful to pull back sometimes so that others can have a go. But I volunteered, and he ran us through this decision-making matrix. And, you know, the more yeses we got, the more congruent we were with this big decision. And I volunteered, and I didn't really know what I was going to say what my decision was. But the moment he asked, and, you know, back then I had no idea what it was. Now I know exactly what it was. Pouring out of my mouth was, I want to be out of my day job in 12 months. Yeah. And all I wanted to do was scoop those words up and shove them back in my mouth. I was like, no, I didn't mean to say that shit. And I could feel like the rash of despair, you know, that red rat. Oh my gosh, I could feel it because the whole room was eyes on me. I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? Went through the decision-making matrix. Of course, out of the 12 elements, I was congruent on every single element. It was yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. That was October. The following November, 12 months later, my job was made redundant, not of my own doing. It was a decision based on the company. And then I had this opportunity because I got a small, not a huge redundancy payment. I got a few $1,000s. And he gave me work up until Christmas. And so I had time and I had space, which some people do have and some people don't have.
Yeah.
And what I decided was with that redundancy payment, I could kind of manage for a couple of months. It was January, and I think through to the end of maybe Feb, roughly, that I kind of calculated if I can make this work with this chunk of cash, if it's not working by the time this money runs out, then I need to go and do something else because I need to find another way to bring in that income to maintain the lifestyle that we'd set up. And by the end of Feb coming into March, it was viable. It was like, okay, I can do this because I had all of this time and space that I previously didn't have available during the week.
Yeah.
And I had built up, I had a following, I had been visible. I didn't buy into my fears of being visible and what that might mean for me and the judgments of other people. I attribute a lot of my success to my willingness and my courage to be seen, because being the world's best kept secret ain't going to help anybody in a business, right? Especially not in the online space.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you've touched on a number of really important points there that I'd love to sort of unpack a bit, because I think there's a couple of things. First of all, you showed up. So you made a decision to see if you could make your own business viable in the space that you had been graced with from this redundancy.
Yeah.
And you showed up. You did the damn work, right? You didn't half-ass it. You didn't say, well, it's summer, so I'm just going to hang out and blah, blah, blah. You actually showed up. And I know that is part of your nature, and it's part of my nature too.
Yeah.
And you also took the responsibility you had to your family, to your household seriously, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest pitfalls that I see with women coming into this space of creating their own business is that there's this problem mentality that I see, which is that we see our partner's income as the revenue that we can use to establish our business. Now, having said that, if you have an arrangement to that effect with your partner, and they happen to be the primary breadwinner because you've decided to step into, establishing your own business, that's fine. But the way that I see it so often happen is there's no imperative for them to succeed, because that income from their partner is always going to be there.
Yeah.
And they may have actually established their entire lives based on a single income household. So it's getting out of the hobby mentality never happens. A kid gets sick, or you get invited to go out to lunch, or someone says, come and spend a week here with me, or what, you're like, okay, no problem. Whereas, very much like you, when I decided I was going to establish the Institute, I was already working as a consultant in my own business, but I went to my husband and I said, okay, I want to ask you if we can make a plan where for the next 12 months, I will potentially have a reduced income, but I'm going to give everything I've got to establish the Institute. And at the end of that 12 months, if I have not replaced the income that I would have been bringing in from my other work, then I'll take responsibility for that and I'll go back to that work. Yeah. So I didn't kind of go, oh, well, he earns a lot of money, our mortgage is covered, no problem. I'm just going to, I was like, this is a negotiation between me and my partner. Like, he really was the investor. And I'm not going to spend money I don't have. So I think you and I are both very good at that as well. That, you know, I still think of myself as lean startup. I'm like, if I don't have to spend money, then I'm in a good place. Whereas I think that's the other thing, is falling into the trap of spending money you haven't yet earned. And I know Laura Elkaslassi would totally agree with both of us on this, but I just think this is a really key point for anyone who is looking to set themselves up, or who has started their business but hasn't managed to gain traction, is if you have no imperative to earn money, you probably won't.
Yeah.
So don't fall into that idea that, you know, I think it's okay to absolutely show up to your relationship or your family household, however that's organized, and to say, I'm going to commit to this, but give it a timeline. And then you're not going to half-ass it. You're not going to accept every invitation. You know, if someone emails me and says, do you want to meet for coffee? I'm like, could you email me 5 bullet points as to why I would want to, you know, give me a reason, because I need to know that stepping away from my desk is worth it.
Yeah.
Because my time, unlike yours, God bless you, is full of humans that need me to do stuff for them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on what you'd said there and share some of that, because I think that mentality of this has to work because there's a financial imperative is vital. And don't wait until you are a single person or your partner doesn't have a job or whatever to figure out if you can be viable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It matters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Not once have I ever thought, like, yes, there was that time when it was that first couple of months of the year, and if I don't, that was very clear. But not once have I ever gone, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to go and get a job. Not once. No. Because I am 100 and however many +% committed to this. Like, I dreamed of it. It poured out of my mouth without me even planning that. But of course, we know why. Yeah. Back then, really wasn't happy with it. But right now, very happy with it.
Yeah.
There is not a single cell in my body that is not a yes to this business, whatever that looks like. And the fact that I have transitioned, and look, let's be honest, 2019 for me was a little wobbly in terms of income. I was trying to find my feet, I was pivoting, but I didn't have a solid ground of what I was pivoting to. And I know what that's like now, because I hadn't had that experience before. So I can relate to a lot of my soul sisters in that regard, because it's like, I felt like I was kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and flailing around, like going, what am I doing? But when I picked something, I stuck with it. So for 2019, I did a lot of work with fear. No one wants to really work on their fear actively in that way. I found, don't talk about the fear, but however, the work that I still do include that. And then of course, ta-da, here comes Ricky Jane Adams going, here's the initiate program. And it was exactly what I was waiting for without even realizing that I was waiting for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. And once again, I love how we've sort of paralleled, because of course you coming into the 3rd level, which year did you?
2018 was my intake, the January.
You know, that obviously was the beginning of setting you on a completely different course in your business, even though at the time you didn't know how, what, or why, or where it went, you know. And I think it's just, I just love hindsight. I love looking at how it's like, you know, did I do all of this just for Chenae? Maybe I did, you know. Did I build the institute for Chenae? But that at every step of the way, everything was aligning, even though you had to be in blind faith for a lot of it. And at least you were throwing the spaghetti at the wall, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the thing, is we're so afraid that if we don't have a fully formed, perfectly made idea, I mean, this is why I love Facebook memories, because I see these Facebook memories come up now of all my dumbass ideas that did not work in the first few years of my business. And I love seeing them now, because I can see that I was trying, right? I was really trying to figure out what my service looked like. And, you know, for me, where that went was a one-to-one model, offering, you know, intuitive readings, and then seeing that I was often having to say the same thing again and again and again to my clients, and going, okay, well, what if I make a program? And that program began as a one-day in-person version of what is now the Initiate program. And then it was like, well, I've got too much content, so let's make that 2 days. And then it was like, oh, I've got clients all over Australia who want to do this in person. Let's go on that journey. And if I hadn't started by trying to do something, that would never have birthed. It didn't land in my head fully formed. It had to be it had to be embodied. I had to do it in order to know what the next step was. And we say that a lot, of course. Your intuition doesn't land with the full map of your future for the next 50 years. It's got to come incrementally, baby steps, baby steps. Yeah. So I'm thinking, you know, when I look at your journey of how, you know, I was the puppet just doing the things that Chenae needed. I know that's not true, but I do love that idea that I was setting it all up for you. So are there any questions you want to ask about the creation of the Institute, or because I want to make sure that we're talking, you know, I'm keep forgetting to look if there are any questions. I don't think there are any so far. If anyone has questions, let us know.
I can have a little look as well and open this up to make things. There's just hellos at the minute from what I can see.
But yeah, is there anything that you want to know or have thought about or intrigues you, or like how did it go? Like, I mean, why was it an institute? That's always a question that I like that people ask, is like, why didn't you start off as Ricky Jane Adams? But I'd love to hear your questions.
Yeah, I think that actually that sparks an idea for a really good question, because obviously we're having very different experiences. Obviously you're the principal of the Institute and I'm a sole trader. Whilst I have a small team that support me, we've got very different business models. So tell me how that, like, I've heard the story. I personally have heard the story of how you switched from the Lightworker Institute. And I remember very vividly, and I tell this story often to anyone who will listen, as to when it went from Lightworker, obviously, and then the Facebook group changed to I'm Spiritually Fierce. And I was like, fuck yes, that's got my name on it. Yes. But the transition from, because I clearly know this book very well, and your story and all of that sort of stuff. Tell us about the transition of, you were working one-on-one and that into the Institute model, because I know little bits of that and how you're working with Angelique and all of that sort of stuff, and your beautiful sister. Can you tell us that, please?
Yeah, well, I think for me, you know, there's a few key points or moments in that for me. So the original date of inception of Lightworker Institute, our original name, was actually July 2014. And if you've read Spiritually Fierce, you'll know it was in a spur of the moment. My mum called me to say that she'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It turned out to be a misdiagnosis, but literally in that moment, her life flashed before my eyes, and I could see all her attempts to create her own business that had failed in this spiritual way. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do it for her because I know I'll make it work. The really cool thing about that is that I was sort of wandering through the desert of faithlessness at the time. I had a new kid. I was feeling, you know, postnatal depletion. I was, you know, really in my muggle, like, fuck you, God. Things have not gone as I thought they would. I mean, it's really like great. My life was perfect, but I was miserable.
Yeah.
And it's because I turned away from God. I'm like, well, it's all too much trouble. And then this phone call came, and it was like being struck by lightning. Thank God it turned out to be a misdiagnosis. But that first year, my sister, my mum, and I tried to run a business together. There were so many misadventures there, I can't even tell you. And there were also some really powerful, potent events that occurred to line everything up for me. One of them was that a friend of mine, one of the things I tried was an in-person meditation workshop in Melbourne. And a friend of mine came and brought her dad along. And he was hilarious. And he would talk about how his intuition led him to Dan Murphy's just at the right time to get his favorite wine on sale. And he was deadly serious, but he was really a character. And he took an interest in me. Turns out this character was like one of Australia's most successful business coaches. And I didn't know him, but he, in return for one-to-one sessions for me, decided to mentor me. And one of the first things he said is, you need to fire your mother and your sister because this is not working. And he said, I'm going to give you 3 months, but I know you're going to do it within, you know, weeks. And I did. And God bless them. They took it really well. I think my sister and I knew this was not working. Yeah. You know, Mum and I were able to reestablish. We have a great working relationship now, but at the time it wasn't working. And so from July 2015, I took over. Within a few months of that, Lightworker had been Angelique's. I came up with the name, but it was because it suited Angelique. Yeah. And within a few months, I decided I needed to trademark my business name. And I went to Michelle Whitehead, my lawyer, who I love and adore. And she basically said, it's too generic, sweetheart. You're not going to be able to trademark that. She's probably never said sweetheart in her entire life, but I'm just transposing that on her. And I'm like, generic? the last thing that I want to be is generic. So no, that is not going to work for me. So let's go back to the drawing board, which, as you know, when you've established a business is kind of scary. Even though I was still in the very early days of that business, I had a beautiful logo, I had the cards, I had the website, I had all of it going on. And I'm like, all right, we got to do this. We got to do this. And I did share this recently. A friend of my mum's had created this beautiful, very, very intelligent, very powerful deck of cards. And I pulled out a card one day and the card was intuitive intelligence. And I'm like, that's what I do. That's it. So I knew it was an institute, and I didn't know then why it was an institute, but I knew that was the gravitas. That was the weight. It wasn't Ricky Jane Adams. It was an institute. And I didn't know why, but I trusted that. Right. So as I say, I started off doing these one-day workshops, which became the Initiate program. But really what established us as an institute is I was working at a clinic down the road from where I am now. And the woman who ran the clinic had a number of one-to-one sessions with me. So I was doing one-to-one and was very successful at that, booked out 6 months in advance. That was all within, a year or so of us starting the institute, within 18 months. And she emailed me one day and she said, Ricky, can you teach me to do what you do? And it just downloaded like this whole, I'd had the idea a year, sort of maybe 3 months before, at the end of 2015, I think, that maybe I could do that. Maybe that could be what I did, but I didn't know. But her email just activated that next step. And I literally replied to her and a fairly good outline of what we now do in the third level downloaded. The hysterical thing is this woman enrolled in the program and then didn't proceed. But 13 other amazing women and one man, believe it or not, appeared, because at the time I didn't know I was training just women. And to me, August 2016, so a year after I took over the business, was the first third level. And that's really when we became an institute. And I really did kind of inhabit the vision. And if you look at that timeline, that's pretty, it still blows me away, babe. Like, we're up to our 8th intake in our 5th year. And I am so humbled by the growth that we've had, but it's just that thing of letting the ideas mature, letting them come to you. I didn't sit down and go, okay, how do I become an institute and plan and schedule and pay business coaches and try to get the ideas to like be ripped out of me. I really, really just gave myself over to the journey. And like you, I then was earning a lot of money, very successful in a one-to-one capacity. And God said, now become a teaching institute. I'm like, but this is working. So why would I fuck this up? And I did. I had to. I couldn't do one-to-one and teach in the way the third level demanded. I did it for a while, but eventually I just had to keep putting my hourly rate up until my final hourly rate was $495 to have a one-on-one with me, because I just had to keep trying to price myself out of demand. And that seemed to be the figure where people went, maybe. Maybe that's a little bit more than I want to spend for an hour with you, Ricky, which is fine because I didn't want to do it, right? So I wasn't trying to create that. So that's a long and rambly story, babe, but I think that's kind of hitting all the key moments.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard pieces of that story, but not in that way before. So thank you for sharing that with us. I have another question that was brewing whilst you were talking. So 5 years since you took over, and things have grown and evolved and changed significantly in that time. And in the last couple of months, there's been a huge amount of change, external forces and all sorts of things going on. How has what you've done so far prepared you for what you've just done? Because I don't know the intricate details, but I know that behind the scenes, what you have done to transition, having gone through the third level in the retreat format version myself, what's that like? Tell us, what do you want to share with us about that? Because I know you've taken what was going to be a Bali retreat and it couldn't be a Bali retreat. And what did that look like? Because for those of us on the outside, we don't know what's happened behind the scenes.
You know that saying, necessity is the mother of invention? Like it really, yeah. So our core training in the third level up until this year was an 8-day Bali retreat. Now I look at it and I'm like, how did we ever do that in 8 days? Because now we take 8 to 9 weeks to do the same content. But okay, so, you know, one of the things about the growth of the Institute is that it's been exponential. And when you grow very, very rapidly, it's a little bit like hanging on for dear life. And I think that a lot of what I created was created in response to need. So something would occur and I'm like, okay, create that. And there hasn't necessarily been enough or any time really to go, okay, let's intentionally sit down and look at what we want to create. So even though it's been insane chaos, it's also been incredibly exciting because once again, my intuition had led me to start creating things that would allow us to transition to this online, completely online. And now the third level is completely online and it will stay that way. So this is the really cool thing, is that even though we've done it in response to a pandemic that prevents us from traveling, God knows for how long, until Chenae's wedding, obviously, because that will be when all travel bans are lifted. Until that time, I have to make sure this is not a second choice, but actually the best way of doing things. And so it's been very, very powerful to look at how can we not just respond to this need, but actually get better as we do it. I'm really so blessed by the incredible mentor team I have, and especially Alicia Halpin, who is a graduate of the program, who is an academic like myself, although she's a tenured academic even now, who's able to bring her absolute genius mind to a program that she understands intimately because she's walked the path of the program. And together we've really up-leveled a huge amount of the resources. We've created this, you know, do you know that 8-day retreat? I would run it from here, right? I mean, I don't mean, we had a schedule and all the rest of it, but the teaching was entirely in my brain.
Yeah.
I would write notes in my Moleskine, but I didn't even have anything on a computer. And that's fine unless I die, right? So if I am truly creating an institute and I'm the only one who knows how to teach something, that's not actually creating a genuine institute. So that's been one of the best things. We now have a 100-page document, the methodology manual, which is the contents of those 8 days in a book, which will become a book. It's going to be the second part of the second book, The Future of Intuition. We just need to outsource some children or something in order to get the space to run that. So it's been great, actually. It's been really intense, but I really need to give full credit to the women who came into that program at the beginning of the year thinking they were getting an 8-day Bali retreat and went with me with every change that I had to ask them to accommodate. They came with me 100%. Not only that, they were dealing with a pandemic. They were dealing with income uncertainty. They were dealing with homeschooling children. They were dealing with not getting to have that gorgeous, glorious reward of walking away from their life for 8 days and having people make their bed and cook their food and getting massages, to slug it out with me over an 8-week period where what I needed them to do in terms of showing up was so much more. So those women made me feel certain that we could make this model work. And now we've refined it, of course, for our next intake who've just begun. But that group who started at the beginning of the year, one of our biggest intakes ever, just gave me so much confidence that this work matters. And, you know, one of the great things out of this, Chenae, that's been really, I guess, galvanizing for me is part of me kind of wondered at some level, is the retreat the draw card? Like, is everyone like, yeah, I want to be an intuitive guide, but what I really want to do is go to Bali for 8 days. I mean, little do they know when they get there that I'm going to work them so fucking hard. They're going to come home half the week. You know, it's not a holiday, but you go with this excitement and energy. And I worried, that was my one fear, kind of promoting the next intake of the third level without a retreat.
Yeah.
Was that the thing that made people finally or kind of commit when everything else was a bit uncertain? And I'm really, really excited to share that we've got yet another one of our biggest intakes ever during a pandemic with no retreat. And it just makes me go, okay, so the work works. Yeah. Like, the work is what matters, not the go to Bali and have a retreat, but actually the quality of what we're doing, the excellence, the integrity, and all of those things are what speak volumes. And I think that's something I just kind of feel really excited to share, because, you know, when you there's always that thought of like, maybe everyone just wants a retreat. Like, maybe it's not actually about me or the program. So I'm rambling again, but I feel like that's, it's not an easy thing to answer, but it's actually been strangely enough, probably exactly what we needed at this point of maturity in the Institute. We needed to just get some more things in place. We've revolutionized our assessment process. We've up-leveled all of that. We're really so much more, even more congruent in the delivery. I'm so much better at managing a team, because that's been a huge shift for me. Because even though it was an institute, I was pretty much like, you know, the desk
and everything else.
And I would, you know, the communication of ideas, how to, you know, now all of that, I have had to learn a lot about how to kind of step into that role of managing my team, not just being a solo agent who can have a random idea at 2 a.m. and then make it happen. It's huge. I mean, we could talk for days about all of that, but I want to.
I would love, is there anything that comes to mind if you think about, you know, face palm moments and cringeworthy moments? Because like what I think is important is, yes, it's 5 years. Yes, we're both successful, but let's also be real about it, because there's some really shit stuff that I've definitely experienced. Does anything come to mind off the top of your head that you would like to share with anybody?
I don't share any of it, but of course I'm going to be brave and I'm going to do my best. Yeah, fuck, I've had some extremely good faceplant moments. I will say I've also had a very, very blessed journey. So we have grown exponentially, and I mean that in all ways. You know, I have the amazing Laura Elkislassie on my team, and you know, she hates me saying it, but I fully credit her. You know, I've never had a business coach, but she's my mentor, my business mentor. She's my money mentor. You know, she's kept me on the straight and narrow, because basically if I take an idea to her and she's like, how is that profitable? And I'm like, oh, it isn't. You know, she's
great butt kicker.
She keeps, you know, a business is not a business if it's not profitable. Like you can be the most amazing person, as you say, in the whole world. It doesn't really matter. If you're in business, you need to be profitable, because otherwise you cannot sustain that business. And the more you have, the more you can give. And that's definitely our experience. I'm not answering your question though. Look at me avoiding the face palm. Yeah.
We want to know you're real, Ricky. We want to know you're human.
Oh, fuck, I'm so human. I mean, for me personally, the biggest issue that I find that causes me to go face palm all the time is my sense of personal responsibility for every woman who comes into the programs that I run, into the 3rd level specifically. My hardest thing to learn was, and continues to be, how do I sit back from there, like hold them, support them, but not need there to be an outcome. Some women are going to finish, some women won't. Some women will love it, some women won't. And that's caused me the greatest consternation, for sure. I've given myself more, I've probably taken more years off my life through taking everything so personally. And it is my service, it is my soul writ large, of course it is, but that's not a good business position. I am running a business. I will still be Ricky even if I don't have the institute. So how do I find a sustainable place within that where I am not measuring my worth based on other people's approval of me? So they've been my biggest personal facepalm moments. But in terms of, you know, in terms of where I've really fucked up, I think, you know, I had the very first iteration of the postgraduate program was called the Masters. And that failed spectacularly. I mean, hugely. And that, you know, I can see it was an idea that came too soon. I think that's the biggest issue. It was an idea before its time. I wasn't mature enough in my business. I wasn't confident enough in myself. And that program was created because I was overwhelmed with the burden of responsibility of trying to run this business. And I was trying to hand off the responsibility to others, thinking that was, I don't know, I thought it was a good idea. And it was so wrong. And it went so badly. And it was genuinely one of those things that I didn't know I'd survive. But I had to find that spiritual steel and that, okay, is this business worth me going through the feeling of humiliation and to discover humility, which of course is that willingness to accept that this is all serving me. You know, that was a turning point, and I made it through, and the Institute made it through. And for me, that really was like where I earned my stripes. So that was the hardest thing I've ever endured. I mean, probably in my business, but also personally. Yeah. But to come out the other side of that and to learn from it and to reflect upon it, to grow, to make the changes necessary, and to recognize that I have not been handed a responsibility that is greater than I can manage, because otherwise I wouldn't have been handed this. I'm God's hands and feet in the world. It's got nothing to do with me. But that's my big one. What about you, baby?
Well, I just want to speak to what you've mentioned, because the humility that you demonstrate in the world, and I'm sure that there's 13 people watching along live, and someone's just said, thank you for your honesty. I reckon I could probably confidently, without checking in with them all, speak for many of us within the Institute, saying that your humility actually sparks and inspires humility within all of us. Because in last year, with me throwing all of the spaghetti at the wall, even the gluten-free stuff didn't fucking stick. I just it was so humbling, but I knew that it was possible. And that was because of you, through no doing of you consciously on your own. It was because I knew that it was possible. You had planted enough of a seed in us as a collective, I believe, to say that spirituality does not equal poverty and all of the associated, ideas with that. And I knew it was possible, and I kept going and I kept going, because again, not once did I have the moment of going, fuck this, I'm just going to go and get a job. And it's because of the inspiration that you have provided us, me personally, that is entirely possible. And now I sit here having come off the tail end of doing some really shitty work with my, for me, cycling back to answer your question about biggest facepalm moment for me, it's got to be that I knew the law of correspondence, right? That the thoughts and feelings within me were just manifesting their exact likeness in the world around me. And I was just having the biggest pity party last year about money.
Yeah.
Totally just in the grump and everything. I felt poor. I felt scarce. I felt like this lack mentality was everywhere. And of course, it was totally within me, and I was just more powerful than I give myself credit for, right? Yeah. As many of us find is.
That's our scary thing. Yeah, we're more powerful than we want to handle.
Yeah. And what ended up happening was I got to the point where the gorgeous Brooke, one of our fellow sisters, started running money healing masterminds. And even though I knew there was part of it that would have been part of the initiate training, which we are both certified teachers of, I signed up and I was like, I'm done. I am finished with this. I am so finished with scarcity and lack. That's what, if you go back in our private messages, you will see that I've literally said, I'm done with this. I'm finished. But prior to that was but it was like a really long and painful, drawn out facepalm moment for me. It was so frustrating, and I was creating more of it, but I just couldn't get myself out of it because I was doing it alone. And I think that also links into, part of the reason when we had my interview for the postgrad, I knew I was coming into the postgrad program, right? I knew I could, it was there for me, ready and waiting. And there's so many things swirling around in my brain that I can't even decide which one I want to kind of voice. But I remember it was, words actually can't do it justice. So I did this program with Brooke, and that was the end of it. I'm now creating the abundance that I had created in my old business before I had pivoted. But I'm going to park that there. Otherwise, I'm going to start 6 different stories and we won't be done for 3 hours.
Maybe we need to do a series on, because I think there's always that moment. There's that core shadow, that core fear that if you can get on top of that, our service is our medicine, right? So if you're not getting on top of these things, if you're not spending time with these things, you won't have a business, because there's no need for that. And for me, that core fear was, definitely around, this is going to all end. Like, it's going to finish. This won't last. This is not going to be sustainable. And I worked with that fear probably for 2 years. And it was a constant terror that everyone would suddenly stop. And now I don't have that fear anymore. And I think, I know that is why the Institute could go where it's going to go. And now you know that your business can be as successful, if not more successful, than it was in its previous iteration, because you've sat with the discomfort of that.
Yeah.
You didn't try to avoid that. And then you've got expert support to hold you through that. And that's what, in all the people I've worked with, including, and especially, I'll keep mentioning her name, Laura Elkis-Lassie, that having people to hold you to the fire while you meet your shit around this stuff. Like, it is uncomfortable as hell to run your own business because it is a constant self-investigation. And if you're not self-inquiring all of the time, you will fail, because this is how you bring up all of your insecurities and your doubts and your fears and your limits, is you to put yourself out there in that way.
Yeah.
I think what we should end with, though, is something a little different and a little bit joyful, because you are about to start the postgraduate program.
Yes.
And that is incredibly exciting. And it's exciting for you and for me, because this is the first intake of the postgrad after the pilot. We've just completed our pilot round.
Yeah.
Which, of course, going back to my story of my biggest facepalm, relaunching a postgraduate program was terrifying, because I had felt like I failed so badly with the first time. I was like, why would I do that to myself again? But I knew the time was right and I'd done the work. And now I get to move into your intake, which will be the most rich and full and exciting version, because I've not only done the failure, the pilot, I now get to kind of enjoy the experience. And you received a present, I think, from me.
So 2.
You got 2. So one is going to be more interesting than the other. So I think open the white one.
Okay.
Because that's the one that, and big shout out to Angelique Adams, who's the intuitive intelligence, tapping teacher in the Institute now. She's also the lady who went to the post office and posted all the postgraduate packages. So, because I'm like, Mom,
thanks, Mama.
So all of our postgraduate priestesses receive this welcome pack, of course. They all receive a welcome pack in the 3rd level as well. But this one's been really fun to put together, because, of course, you've earned your stripes, baby. You're coming into a postgraduate education. So what do you get from Mama Ricky when you're coming into that?
It also has a little sticker on the back as well, which has got, like, no one has to write the return address for the Institute ever again now, which is just like, that's proof that you've made it, because no one has to write that shit down.
My mum's like, it's too small. You need bigger stickers, Ricky. I'm like, yeah, baby, we do, but that's...
Maybe next time. All right, I will have to pull them out in pieces, but that's okay, because I think...
Some of it will be really cool to share, and some of it might be a bit dull, but I thought it would be a lovely little thing. You have to have a pencil case. That's what we do in the Institute, right? But you know what?
Some of you may remember this.
Yeah, I tried really hard to find gold. It's hard
To come by.
Yeah, so rose gold seems to be the thing now.
This is actually perfect, because my brand is rose gold, navy, and soft pink. So thank you for that. And in here is something as well.
Oh yeah, I'm a bit excited about this one.
Shall I do this now?
I think you should.
All right.
Yeah.
Temple of the Sun. It says Byron Bay, Australia. And it's got, let me move that so that's going to sit on your face on your book there. I'm going to open this up to try and hold it up high. It's an awkward height of my height. Handcrafted with love for you. Oh, and it's written, and it's got a little hand-drawn love heart on it. This is exciting.
No.
Spoiler alert, if anyone is like not open theirs yet, don't watch.
I know. They are all the same. So yes, everybody will be getting.
Okay, so pause now if you need to come back to it. That just looks like a little product info booklet. So I'll keep going. I'm drawing this out on purpose.
One US-based sister who may never, I sent packages to the US like a month ago and they're still not there.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you that, but the emblem, which looks like it's a lion, not a lion, a tiger, jaguar, something with wings. Does that mythical creature of those two things combined have a name?
Pegasus, maybe it's not, or is it Pegasus a horse?
Is it Pegasus the horse with wings? I'm not quite sure. It's so beautifully wrapped. We're going to be here for 3 weeks.
I know, and I really wanted to open it up and have a look at it in person, and I couldn't because they were so beautifully individually wrapped. And I was like, well, I can't mess up that. going to have to stay.
I'm really pleased that these arrived, because 2 days ago, I've got a girlfriend, Deb, of mine, who has done the initiate program with me and has also supported me in running the 2-day version, and is going to be supporting me for the Noosa retreat because Bali's not happening. It's her birthday in a couple of weeks, and I had 2 things arrive yesterday, day before, both of which were for her birthday. And the same thing, I wanted to open and have a look what we did for her, but then packaged it so beautifully that I couldn't have a peek. Oh, it's so delicate, and I'm just one of those ripping kind of people, and I'm trying so hard not to. Oh, okay, I'm starting to see it now. All right. So it's on a little card, but I think it's not attached, so I will lose it if I don't hold it up.
It's so pretty.
So let me see if I can turn it around and show you guys. I don't know if it's going to, no, I don't think I'll be able to get the detail with the light.
Later, but yeah. Oh, I'm really happy with that, babe. That's good.
I like this. This is beautiful. There's this beautiful little detail again with the non-Pegasus on it.
Whatever that winged something is, if anyone knows, let us know.
Yeah, can someone look that up? I'm going to pop it on and show you what it looks like, because it'll go with my Kim Ewing Mama Goddess. I just wear 3rd level related things.
I know, and now so you're going to have your 9 sisters, and you will all have the same bling. So when we get together on our retreat, you'll be able to find each other in a crowd.
My top is from Kia West's mother. Like, I literally am all of the things.
Amazing.
The light's not great, but I will take a picture so you guys can see.
I'm not sure if anything else in the package is going to be as exciting as that, babe, but if you want to have a quick look, you can show us what's in there. And then in the other package, you've got a little card, you can read that.
I can pull them all out now that there's a little less bulk.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a pen. Guess what color it is?
It's got to be gold. Yeah.
It's got to be gold. We have a copy of this, which I have somewhere, thanks to, again, Laura. I have one of those somewhere.
Oh no, you did get 2. So I accidentally posted 2 of the moleskins to someone, so I'm going to have to get you to send that to someone else. I knew I'd fucked up somewhere in the pudding. See, there's a facepalm moment. In my packing of packages, I sent you 2 moleskins.
Well, I'm glad it was me, and I will forward that.
We'll find out who doesn't get their moleskin, and then you can send it on to them.
Work that out. Beautiful. And then
what I love about that moleskin is it's actually an 18-month planner from July to the end, so it's the exact length of your program.
I don't know if you can see it, but it says so here. It says July 2020 to December 2021.
Exact length of your program. So it's a little bit different to a regular plain one, but it's going to help us all with our planning.
Oh, beautiful. Very reflective of the light. And then we have the postgrad diploma in spiritual directorship course outline and handbook with, of course, the picture of the gorgeous women on the front of it from...
So you've got your stuff now, it's all happening. And so we'll be beginning on I think the 27th of July.
Something like that, sometime after when I was meant to get married.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was literally like going to be the day before, or like a few days before we would be celebrating your wedding. And
our wedding was the timing 26th. I think it was the day after, when highly unlikely that I may have made it live.
Yeah. So we are, yes, you might have had a bit of a hangover for that one, or, just giving no fucks. I don't want to come to school today. I just got married. So it was closely timed. All right. So these are...
I'm just muting and unmuting while I rip this package out apart.
2 of my favorite spiritual texts, and hopefully ones that you haven't read yet.
Neither.
I had to work really hard to find texts that I knew would be new or newish. And Your Holiness by Debbie Ford is a book of prayer, and it's her journey from drug addiction through to, living in a state of grace. She's no longer with us, but it's a very, very beautiful book. And that book was actually found by her sister after she died. They didn't know that she'd written this book. And her sister went to see, I think, one of those very famous mediums in Hollywood. And he said, Debbie, there's a book, go find it. And this book was published. So that's a very, very sacred text. And the other text is by an American-based teacher called Adyashanti. And it's looking at the life of Jesus through a different lens. And it's a very beautiful book. And really speaking about the inner sanctum of Jesus's world, which was the disciples. And of course, part of what you are doing by becoming a postgrad is stepping into the inner sanctum of the Institute. And yeah, it's a really sacred text. So I think we're going to have fun with that one as well. So, my darling, I think we've gone far and wide. I'm so grateful to everyone who joined us and those who will watch back later. I think, you know, we really could have gone down a million different rabbit holes, but really it was just this opportunity for us to, I guess, both go, well done. You've done a really good job. And I'm super impressed with you. I continue to be blown away by the depth of your commitment to this path. And I'm so excited to see what we get to create together, both in the postgrad and you know, just as part of this institute.
Yeah, thank you. The sort of rambling that I've trailed off on earlier was basically the gist of where I wanted to go, was that it was just that I was missing having a mentor or someone to support me. I was going it alone. So I'm very excited for the postgrad to be the next 18 months and really grateful for that. And congratulations to you on 5 years. Such a huge achievement, you know, so different being a full institute as opposed to a sole trader. And, you know, we are so grateful for you and that you have stuck it out and for your tenacity to still be there and leading that revolution that we are all such a part of. So thank you for doing that.
Wow, you're the reason the institute exists. You know, it's all down to the women who walk through the doors. Amazing. I feel very, very full and satisfied, and you've helped me transmute some of my heavy energy about being back in stage 3 restrictions in Melbourne. I'm like, and so grateful for this conversation at any time we get to spend together. There's a lot more conversations coming up with the Alumni Sisters. We've just been putting some plans in place beginning next week. I'm very excited to showcase the women who really do make this an institute and share their wisdom with you. It's going to be really fun, I think.
Yes, I sent a little message to my pod and said,
oh, good. Yay.
And we've already started. Lisanne has said we're going to break the internet, which is entirely possible.
Amazing. Do it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So much love to you, my darling, and to everyone who's participated. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.